Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Story Edge. Look, this podcast is really about connecting with awesome people, sharing stories that inspire, that uplift, that inform. And today, I've got with me Steven Levy from Dare to Be Coaching, a really awesome coach, leadership coach, mentor. And by the way, my name is Marlon August. I always forget to introduce myself. Welcome, Steven. I'm so excited to have you. I'm so excited to share some of the awesome, the awesomeness that is you. Welcome.
Yes. Thank you so much, Marlon. What an intro. I appreciate it. I'm humbled by it, and it's such an honor to be on your show with you. Because I know what you do and your story advantage. I suppose that's what it's about, not being a marketing man, but I suppose that's what about is story, our stories. We all have a story, I would imagine.
Well, yeah. I think, a lot of people undercut the story. I mean, we live our story every single day, and for us, it's fairly monotonous. But for other people to sort of learn, engage, and just sort of pull from each other's stories, that's where we get our energy from. And in just talking in the world of marketing and in the world of business, this has become so much more prevalent. It's something that we really need to dive into. But the thing is, we had a discussion the other day, and as a coach, as a leadership coach, you help a lot of organizations, you help business leaders, executives get the most out of themselves and, to perform better, not only in their professional lives, but in their personal lives, and therefore driving their business more. I want to ask you, in this world of where we are right now, where we're in this space of, I'd say, a lot of confusion, there's a lot of struggle, this fight between this corporate world versus, not corporate, this business world versus our personal lives that's now getting kind of squashed because of COVID, because of the new environment we kind of find ourselves in. How important is the mindset and just getting everything in check from your perspective and in the business that you work in?
Wow, that's such a good question, and so I think it's so relevant, Marlon, to exactly what's going on now. Because if you look at the environment and the space that we find ourselves in, actually globally, and I think if I can relate back to what you said about how important is the mindset, this space has had an effect on us mentally. There's a lot of mental fatigue that has set in, which then causes a lot of frustration, which can then cause, I call it the 3 Fs, and don't worry, it's not one of them's not, I'm going to keep it clean. They might equal that, but
right.
So it's it's fatigue, frustration, and then that causes fracture. And what I mean about fracture is you see it's this fracture in like a disconnect within the teams in business because of those two things. And what it highlights is I think it's come because COVID has gone on a lot longer than we expected. So a client of mine who's actually overseas said to me, I said to him, "Oh, how's your quarter one in 2021? And he said, "We're not in quarter one, we're in Q5. Yeah. He says it's a continuation of 2020. Yeah. And I found that so profound. So yeah, I coach specifically around behavioral change in business, aligned to strategies. So I'm not specifically a strategic coach. I understand strategy because of my own journey in my own businesses and in the corporate world. But yeah, in answer to your question, Marlon, it's extremely important. How do we show up as ourselves? And how do we keep ourselves mentally fit to deal with what's happening at the moment? So, yeah, I work around that, and
let's talk about that. I want to just talk
Okay.
about that quickly. Like, so what is this like mentally fit? Because I mean, you mentioned those 3 Fs. I mean, that frustration, that fracture. As you were saying it, I was just realizing, like, flip. How do you even? Sometimes the fracturing, even though fractures, like in terms of the word, is a complete break. But
Break.
But sometimes you let's just say the cracks, when they start to form, you don't even notice them until you get that massive, like, that's, like things are really not working. I mean, how do, from a mindset point of view, which is really like a soft awareness, how does one like click into that and start to notice these fractures starting to occur, with all of this frustration and stuff?
Well, how we know they're starting to occur is we need to listen to our bodies. We need to be more aware of ourselves. So it comes down, the one example I can give you that I've actually lived is to recognize when we are mentally tired, when we are mentally actually exhausted. And we'll pick that up in being maybe short with people. Our patience runs out. It's assigned to us. We get overwhelmed with things that we haven't been before. And there's a lot of uncertainty that we're sitting with and lack of direction. And we don't like that, So when we find ourselves in doubt, where are we going? It's all changed. And we've had to shift our mindset in how to deal with this. So the awareness, self-awareness, is extremely important. Does it mean it's not going to happen to us? No. In fact, it will happen to us. Why? Because we're human. But I think the one thing, and that I work on, and this is what I've lived, and I learned the lesson, a hard lesson, is to take the time out for ourselves. Time out should not be a luxury. It should be part of our strategy. It should be part of our business strategy, where as business owners, as leaders who are in positions where the responsibility is to make critical decisions in the business, time out is vitally important to go and reflect and to step away from the daily grind and out of the noise. But we first need to understand self. We need to be aware of self, and it's not an easy journey. If I can share an experience of that.
Yeah, please.
In the early 90s, I was probably like all of us are. We're building businesses. We get stuck into the business. We give the business all of our attention, and we work 15 hours a day, 16 hours a day, whatever it is. It's not sustainable. I thought, I'm doing this in service. I have to do this to build a business because I have a family to look after, and I have staff to look after, and I have clients to look after. So I worked that hard. I then discovered that I'm not bulletproof. And the universe, so you said, how do you know? I was so exhausted, I had to go and see I can't remember, it was a clinical or industrial psychologist. When I walked through her door, she didn't even greet me. She said to me, not because she's unfriendly, she said to me that, she must have seen, so I must have looked quite a state. She said to me, you need to stop right now. And then asked me, what do you do to take time out? What are the things you enjoy doing? And I told her running and going to gym and playing golf and doing karate at that stage and so on. And she said, how much time do you give to each of those? And I said, well, not at the moment, it's probably all in theory. And she said, that's the problem. And she said, why don't you do it? And cut a long story short, I had a lot of excuses why I don't, or reasons. And she said to me, one of them was, I don't like to go in the afternoon when the gyms are very full. So she said, well, why don't you go like at 5 o'clock after work? She said, why don't you go at 3 o'clock? I said, well, I've got to be at the factory, and I must, then my staff are there and close up and lock up. She said, oh, are you the only one that can? I said, no, I have a factory manager. She said, okay. If you had to go and see a client at 3 o'clock, would you go? I said, yeah, of course. And she said, if the client kept you there till after 5, what would you do? I said, well, nothing. My factory manager would lock up. She said, so does the factory know? And the next morning when you come back, did everything work all right? Did everything run well? It was still there? I said, yeah. She said, so the factory doesn't know whether you're at a client or whether you're at a gym. So if you enjoy doing that, you need to look after yourself in order to look after these people that you're telling me you dearly want to look after, but you're so focused on looking after. She says, if you don't stop, you're going to be in a hospital bed within the next month, and I hope not with a heart attack. And that made me realize that saying that we work 16 hours a day or 14 hours a day without a break, is not sustainable, and it's not a badge of honor. And I think sometimes that's what we do. So that was a hard lesson to make me realize how important it is to take time out just to step out of the noise.
So let's talk a bit about what that time out looks like. I mean, you mentioned some things like doing some sports, or it was interesting because when you said your time out has got nothing to do with work. It's got absolutely, there was not a computer inside. You're either on the golf course or you're doing karate or you're going for a run. There's not a computer inside. There's not another person. No, you might have other people on the golf course or whatever, or even playing with someone. But essentially, it's a lot of you alone. Now, I know a lot of people do Netflix as a way of switching off. And I haven't found like that really helps much, because you just end up binging and then you still like feel like there's something missing. But what is really taking that time off, taking that time out? What does that look like? And how do you suggest that people should actually do that?
Oh, I think they need to do whatever works for them. So because running, what is the space that they can shift or move into where it's a space that they can just switch off? Some people like meditation. I don't have the patience to meditate for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes because my mind starts wandering.
Right.
Okay. But if I get out on the road and I run, it's a great space for me to be in because I'm doing something. So my focus is off work. Yeah. Do I think about things that are work related? Of course I do. But I think about it with a clear mind. I'm getting the noise out of my head. I'm emptying the vessel to allow new things to come in. But I'm not consciously focused on going for a run and thinking, oh, I must think about it. It just happens.
Yeah.
So there's no conscious effort to actually think about business. And it's amazing what ideas come. So I think in answer to your question, I think people must write down what that space looks like for them. Netflix might be it. If they're going to binge and overdo it, then they're probably not managing the space well. So it mustn't mean they mustn't do it. I suppose it's like anything, if we overdo it, then it really, it doesn't like work. If we're gonna work 16 hours a day, it's not sustainable. We have to do it sometimes because we have to meet deadlines. But if we're doing it continuously, it's not sustainable.
I mean,
So I think it's important for people to identify that space for themselves.
So that it leans towards that what you mentioned earlier around being self-aware, and I think this is a big thing today, especially because we are more focused and giving more attention to mental well-being, and it's like, I guess, like when you understand, like, these are the things that I enjoy. This is what drives me, or this is what I feel relaxes me. That those things is what we should be doing to help in these other spaces. And I mean, I found that the best ideas actually come when I'm not at work. The best ideas actually come when I'm not engaged in what I was supposed to be, when I'm supposed to be productive. Usually those ideas come when I'm like doing something completely different. And that space is like so important. So I totally get it, and I totally understand that. So you're suggesting that people should, take some time out again to actually write down those things that they feel the spaces that they feel most comfortable to do anything other than work.
Yeah.
And really use and then manage that time appropriately in conjunction with work. Now,
yeah.
Now I just I want to ask, like, on the flip side of this, because you mentioned not having the time, or not, and that was mainly, like, the way I understood it was an idea that you sort of built up, that you didn't have the time to do that. But you had staff, you had people that work under you that you pay to actually support you. What about those entrepreneurs that maybe, they have these big goals and dreams, and this thing it's not gonna build itself. When they stop, it stops, What about those people? And especially now, many people have lost their jobs. The opportunity, I was listening on Clubhouse the other day, the impact of COVID, and certain people who don't want to take the vaccine, how in the United States, certain firms have actually fired people for not wanting to take the vaccine. So that had put in a whole new dimension where people, not only do they have the stresses of whatever financial issues they were currently in, added to that now, they probably have the opportunity to dive in as an entrepreneur, which takes long to actually, like, get the hang of if you've been an employee for a long time. Like, how does one, especially an entrepreneur, really get that time out, or take that time out to replenish the energy and to get more focus in less time? I mean, 16 hours is generally what someone has to do, work at night, work late hours. But then how does one sort of manage this if they're a one-man army?
Marlon, I think, first of all, I didn't realize that people could get fired for not taking the vaccine. But that's another discussion.
It's not. Yeah, it is. But I mean, it's not like, I don't think they blatantly do it like that. But that is and in the United States, you can get fired. You'll find a slip on your desk, and it's that simple. It's not like here. So it's a very, very interesting space over there. But it's what's happening.
So I think, coming back in answer to your question, I think it's very important that as entrepreneurs, because we're all guilty of that. And I say guilty of that because of what I said earlier, it's not sustainable. So when we start our businesses, we need to understand and be very clear, take time, amazing enough, to understand why you're starting your business. Be very clear on that. And then what value adding, what is your business doing to the people that you're targeting, your potential clients? what is your business doing for them? Then there are certain things that need to be done in the business. And as you correctly said, as an entrepreneur or a solopreneur at that stage, you have to do all these things yourself. Okay. It's very dependent, first of all, before you start the business, and it's something I ask a lot of entrepreneurs, is that they want to start the business, they have great ideas, they have all the intention and everything will do, and then I ask them, how long what resource have you got to be able to fund you while you're building your business, and for how long? That's important, because that's going to have an impact on how they manage that 16 hours that you're talking about. And the reason I say that is because if I don't have funding, okay, and I had this the other day with a client, if I don't have funding, I start operating out of desperation to generate that income.
Which is more stressful.
Yeah, which is exactly. And then I hop into that world. I just keep working away and working away and working away. So to now answer your question is, how much of that time that I'm working away, am I just doing it because I'm operating from a place of desperation, or am I doing it because working those hours is contributing to generating income? And do I have to do it now? So it comes down to prioritizing, or can I do it tomorrow? So I think we just get caught up in that. If I'm not working, I'm not producing. And there's a difference between being busy and being productive. So I think that's the mind shift. And I'm not a psychologist. It's things that I've experienced. And when you do take that time out, that cliched saying of less is more, it's not a myth. It's very true. So sometimes we need to take that. We always say we don't have time. Sometimes we need to take that time out to create that time. And what I mean by that, if I'm exhausted, and I'm trying to do something, it's going to take me a lot longer than when I'm mentally fit and fresh to take on that project, that same task. When I take on that task, when I'm really alert, I'll probably do it in half the time that I was going to do it when I'm exhausted. So I can actually create time. So I think that it's important, and it's not easy. It's not easy as an entrepreneur to do that. But one has to be really disciplined and make a conscious effort just to make yourself, or an appointment with yourself on your calendar is probably more important than any other appointment you can make. Even, I'll go to the point saying, even with your clients, because if you're exhausted and you burn out, how good are you going to be to your clients?
Yeah. 100%. It took me a long time, and I guess this is the thing. It's like we can talk about it as much as possible, but you'll only really feel it when you're in the emotions. When you've experienced burnout, when you know what that feels like. Because as much as you can try and tell people, I guess we kind of, as human beings, have to feel those extremes of what relaxation is and what burnout actually feels like. Where you can't think and you just sort of get stuck. But I want to jump into something else, because you, as a coach, and I'm very much in the space of personal development. I've been in that industry, personal development, business development, and I've been in that industry for many, many years. And I think one of the spaces that one of the guys I follow, he talks about a lot, is that they don't really like the whole coaching world, but mainly because not because of it's not bad or anything. It's more because people try and manipulate others to like take their course or do their coaching, and they really have very little experience of life. But your story is very different in that sense. I mean, you actually have experienced business and you've done it in a few different industries. Do you mind? Do you mind just going back and just like starting almost at the beginning of your career, and how you ended up at this point in your life?
Well, actually, Marlon, yeah, I'll try to do it as quickly as possible. So for me, sport was very much my thing at school. And not that I didn't, I had to do my academics, but I didn't focus on it. So I often think sometimes if it wasn't for sport, I wouldn't have been at school.
You and me both.
Much to my parents' disgust, but bless them. And then, but not because I was dwarf, I did what I needed to get through. But I learned a lot of lessons out of sport. So I wanted to do teaching, but then and I applied at Teachers Training College in PE. I had to do another teaching subject on the higher grade, and I thought, oh my goodness, I've just spent 12 years at school. I'm not, you're just asking me again, no. Whether it was a good or bad decision, I'm not sure. I think my journey wouldn't have panned out the way it had if I had got into Teachers Training College. So, but I love people. I recognized even at school, but I only realized this later in life, because it came naturally to me, that I had a great passion for people and a firm believer that everybody has something unique to offer the world. And I learned that on the sports field. When I captained a rugby side, and when I say captained the rugby side, I was at a small school, so I wasn't at these big schools like Rondebosch or Kes or Grey College or so on. But there were people that, and this is the lesson that I took out of it, is that, and that I took with me into the corporate world and into my own businesses, especially with teams, is that there were guys on the field that were naturally gifted and naturally talented, great ball skills. Then there were other guys like myself who didn't have those natural ball skills. So I had to get super fit and work hard to get into the first team. But I noticed at practice that some of these guys that were naturally talented felt that they didn't have to partake in the practice. So I actually stopped it. And I asked the coach, what's happening here? And he said, what do you mean? I said, these guys standing on the side, they're not partaking. He said, bottom line, you can have a chat to the team if you want to. And I did. And I asked them, and they said, well, we got these natural skills. We can use them, and we feel we don't really need to be on the field right now. So, okay, but that's going to come to a stop, because we're a team. We need to practice together. And how do we gel together and bring what we all do well, and to achieve what we want to? And that, I suppose, is beating the other side. So you can have all the ball skills in the world. If I don't go and fetch that ball for you, your skills count for nothing, because without the ball, you're useless. By the same token, if I don't have you in the team to give the ball to, then all my hard work in fetching the ball also counts for nothing, because I don't have it to someone to pass to go and use their skills to go and score the tries. That was a big lesson for me, and I took that into business and how we work in teams. So from there, I went into the construction industry, and then I was there in most of the 1980s, and in the 1990s, early 90s up to 2017, I was involved in the textile industry, not making garments. Both those industries that I was in, were not the industries that really got me out of bed in the morning. Yes, it was wonderful in the construction industry seeing a building go from plan stage to where they've completed product. But what got me out of bed in the morning was how we built the teams in order to get it from the paper to the physical building finished, completed, and on time. The textile industry or the fashion industry, exactly the same. I'm the furthest thing from fashion. My daughter often reminds me about that. And she often says, the only The man upstairs knows how you and fashion got together. But what got me out in the morning wasn't the fashion. It was the people in the fashion industry, and specifically the people in my business. I didn't have a big business. It was developing and growing them into what they were. And that
I want to hold you there for a second, because I think what you're talking about is, or what you're alluding to, or what's striking up within me is really important around this, because many people, they're in a job that they hate. Many people are stuck. I mean, even as an entrepreneur, you might be doing the service that you like, but there's so many other aspects of the business that you hate, right? And the more, and I hear it often from people that, I'm just not sort of in the space where I want to be. But you kind of made the best of like very different industries, but still leveraging what you truly liked, even though you weren't super aware of it. You engaged, you focused naturally and that's how I'm reading it, in a space around the people that was driving you. You had no passion for fashion or construction, but still you managed to excel in that space because you naturally moved to where you really in what was natural to you, to connect, that connected with you. And I mean, maybe here's, I just want to, do you have a tip or a thing for people to just sort of get that little bit of awareness and really make the most, like squeeze that juice out of life for where you are right now, even though it's not necessarily where you want to be?
Yes, I do. I have one thing. Ask yourself, but be honest with yourself. What gets you out of bed in the morning? And you have to then keep asking yourself, if your first answer is money, ask us, because we're all in business to make money. We need it. Ask yourself, what else? And then when you answer that, like in my case, if it was my business in the clothing industry or the construction industry, well, what else? And it came down to developing my people. That's what got me out of bed in the morning. So we need to seriously, entrepreneurs, leaders, ask ourselves, what is it that really drives me, and how can I bring that into the space that I'm operating? Not everybody can just, especially if you're employed, you might be in a job that you don't really like, okay, but you might have to be there because you can't just step out of it. You need to earn the income. So how can I bring myself into that space and create an environment where it actually supports my needs in order for me to show up as my best self? But that's a lot of work, and it's a process, it's a journey, and it's not something that happens overnight. So I think, yes, Marlon, in answer to your story, is get clarity on what do you really want to do and what are you good at? What are you naturally good at? I want to come back, if I may, just to what you said about entrepreneurs, that sometimes they're not able to take the time out. It's not only about managing your time. We can't manage time. They're 24 hours in a day, that's it. But how do we manage that ourselves within that time? And I'm saying, a question I would ask myself, which I do still now, is, for example, I'm going to go back to something that happened to me just recently. I struggle with the social media and the technology and all that, okay? But yet I pursue it because it's going to cost me less. I don't have to pay someone else to do it. So I pursue it and I pursue it and I pursue it, and it takes me so long. It's frustrating. So it takes my focus away from what I'm good at. Not only for that time, afterwards, I'm mentally tired because I've been focusing on the stuff. And you know what came up for me, which I want to share with other entrepreneurs? when I took my time out and they actually came up for me on a run, my space where didn't have to think. Okay. I asked myself the question. I was first said, Steven, you're being like ridiculous. This is really irritating and you're spending so much time in it. What is the cost of not paying someone to do this? That was a pivot point for me. And I actually employed the services of someone to do it. I was able to go out and do what I did well. And I'm happy to say that I got one client, so it's already paid for paying this person to help me.
Yeah, brilliant. And there's always an opportunity cost. Yeah,
Yes.
and we have to really figure out what that is. And it's a lot of introspection. And that's like the work that you do. You help people to introspect, right? And so we're going through your journey. You started at the bottom in your construction industry, and then you're managing people at a later stage in the fashion industry, making clothing. So
no, not making clothing.
No, you're not making clothing.
To clothing.
Okay.
Clothing, yeah.
100%. Thank you for the clearing that up. So I mean that is already quite a big progression. What moved you out of that industry now to be where you are right now? I mean that's already it's quite different.
Yeah, it really is. So the construction to clothing just came by default, and I'm not going to go into that whole story, but it was kind of at a stage where it was, do I step in? It was enough. I need to look for something else. And then I got into the clothing industry or the fashion industry by default. And what made me go into coaching was, I don't know. I was driving home one day from work. It was 2014. And I remember as clear as daylight where I stopped. I can picture it as we're talking. I cannot tell you why I stopped, but I can tell you where I stopped. But I just pulled my car over on the side of the road, coming home in the suburbs. I stopped. I phoned a friend of mine our sons played cricket together. So we used to stand around the sports field, this guy and myself, and we used to have a chat, and we got on well. And he had a PhD in psychology, and he was a master coach. So I phoned him and I said to him, Lloyd, I need to chat to you. Where are you? And he told me where he was near. He was pretty close by. Between where he was and I was a nice little deli. So I said to him, listen, meet me at the deli and we're going to have a cup of coffee. And he said, why? I said, just meet me there. It was ridiculous that I didn't even explain to him why. And he said, and what was more surprising, he said, okay. And off we went and we met at the deli. We sat and chatted for 2 hours. And he said to me, Steven, he says, your journey, he said, without a doubt, you should do coaching. My big block was my age. I was 54 then. And this was a huge block for me. He told me, he gave me pointed me in a couple of directions where I could go and study coaching. Anyway, I researched it, went and had interviews with some people at some of the schools and the academies. And eventually I went for coaching because I had this block that I was 54 years old and I have to now start something else. And I thought, wow, it was really a major block for me. So I went for coaching. The wonderful woman that I went to coaching for, who actually afterwards owned, who owned the academy that I studied at, I told her the story about my whole journey. And she listened to it, and the ups and downs and the burnout and depression and successes and failures in business and this strong belief in people and so on. And she said to me one thing that was the pivot for me. She said to me, Steven, she says, I've heard your whole story. You can come and study at this. I think you should do coaching. You can come and study at our academy or any academy. You will get the tools to do coaching. You will learn about coaching ethics. You will learn about coaching modules and all those good things. She says, but what's really going to make you powerful in your coaching is what informs you of your coaching, and that's your journey. And how good a coach would you have been at 25? And that hit me right here. That was the light bulb moment.
Well, this is the thing. It's like, how does an executive, or like people that let's just say 35 up, how do they go to a younger coach? Like the position that you are in is one of authority. It is one of really support, but not to down younger people, and not saying that they shouldn't do coaching. Everyone should definitely, anyone who's drawn to the profession should definitely do it. I just feel that there's a lot more, you've got a lot more experience behind you. You've got these, and that means you've got a lot more to draw on to support people, not just from a perspective of your technical know-how around the mind, but also the empathy that you'd require as a coach. And you got bucket loads of that empathy. We've interacted on numerous occasions, I think as a coach, empathy is one of those major tools that one needs to be able to serve people in the right way. So I totally agree. I mean, like, maybe the Steven of 25 wouldn't have been able to support people in the way that you do now, with the experience that you have, which I think that's so. So jumping in with now, you're coaching people. How, and I noticed that you do a lot of analogies of sports, and you mentioned earlier that you draw a lot from that.
Yeah.
In terms of coaching and the leadership, and really just getting people to tap into themselves. How does, especially people, there's also people that don't like sports at all. Like, so, how do you use that to actually bring, I know you mentioned it earlier, but how do you bring in the sports elements, or the elements of sports into your coaching executives and business owners?
I think whether people like sport or not, everybody knows. No, let me rephrase that. Everybody knows sport, even if they don't partake in it. Okay, most people know sport. I have two analogies that I use. Okay, but the one I spoke about already. So I used the analogy of my learning and the story that I told you about team sport and what I learned from it. That everybody has something unique to offer, to bring to the team. Leaders need to take the time to understand their people that they're leading, and what are those unique talents that they bring to the team, those natural talents that they bring to the team, and how can they then knit that together so that the team, can you imagine a team all working together to achieve a common goal using what they're naturally good at? That's where you get high-performing teams. Mm. Okay? We just witnessed it. I'm not saying that they're playing at their best, but we witnessed it in the rugby tests that have just been played. Okay, it wasn't just Mornay Steyn. It wasn't just Cheslin Colby. They were able to perform because the whole team did what more than that they were supposed to do in their positions, but they also used their talents, each of their talents, which makes them, I suppose, as they are, number one in the world. So I think it's very important that from a team perspective, that's how I use that analogy. From an individual perspective, I learned from running. And this is what I will sit and talk to owners and leaders about, is that I did middle distance and cross country at school. My athletics coach, challenged me to run the Comrades Marathon because I was like Forrest Gump. Okay, I left school, and in those days we took the bus from school home, and I was in Port Elizabeth, so lucky nothing was too far. So it was only 14 k's, so I ran home. And I gave my backpack to my satchel to one of my mates who stayed nearby me. And then I could also use as an excuse not to do my homework because I didn't have my bag with me when I got home. So I used to run around, and he challenged me to do comrades, which I never did. At 90 kilometers was just like too daunting. I couldn't even comprehend it. But in 1986 or 85, I was working for Marion Roberts. 85, we were working in Durban. I trained, pushed myself too hard, didn't balance my strength with my speed work and how fit I was getting. So what happened? Injury. So how do we need to manage ourselves in business, like we were talking about at the time. So you're just pushing yourself, and then you burn out or you get an injury. And then I couldn't even go and run comrades. I was bitterly disappointed, but the want to do it was so strong that I went back. I said, okay, I will recover, and I'm going to go back the next year, which I did, but I learned lessons from it. So now I became a bit cleverer through the advice of a physio, and balanced my strengthening work with my natural ability to run and get fitter. We need to do that in business. In that preparation, I knew what the end looked like of the Comrades Marathon, but I'd never physically seen it. I saw it in a magazine. So I knew what it looked like. We didn't have YouTube in those days. So I'd seen it in a magazine. I had a picture of what this looked like, and I even pictured the board, the digital clock that, at the finishing line.
Yeah.
So I was very clear on that vision. And my athletics coach had passed away, so I said to my wife that I'm going to run this. A lot is in honor of him as well. And I have a specific time that I want to achieve. So in Comrades, the first 10 people get gold, and from the 10 to 7.5 hours is the cutoff for silver, and then from 7.5 to 11, I think in those days, or 10 hours was bronze. I said I'm going to try and do it under 7.5 hours silver. Okay. So I trained, and my training, I researched, I read books by Bruce Fordyce, who was the Comrades mad legend at that time. So it taught me if you're going to learn from people in sort of mentorship and that, learn from people who have achieved those things. Okay, so that's the other lesson out of it.
Mm.
And then I stuck to my training program, and I'll never forget Bruce Fordyce said, if you want to run a Silver Comrades, it's going to be dependent on your 8K time trial. And I thought, goodness me, how do you do this? So anyway, but I trusted that this was right. And he said, you have to run your 8Ks under 32 minutes. So that's less than 4 minutes a K. So I trained, and eventually I got to running 8Ks in 28 minutes something. I was a lot thinner than I am now, and younger, much thinner. So anyway, I did that. But what I want to say to you is I knew that running 90 Ks, no matter how prepared you are, I was also realistic that there's no guarantee that on the day I will achieve what I want to. Because over 90 kilometers, anything can happen. People get stomach bugs, they get the runs, you'll get pulled calf muscles, anything. It's a long time to be on the road. No matter how prepared you are. I've seen fit guys super fit guys that had problems. And I think we've all seen it, even amongst world-class athletes.
Mm.
What I learned from that in business, okay, be sure of what you want to achieve. Have those outcomes, but also understand that it's not a guarantee. Just bring your focus back to your preparation and how you show up every day at your best and do what you do best to increase the probability of achieving that outcome. And that's what we need to do. My wife took a board. She wrote down the times, because I had to run it at 5 minutes a K to get under the 7.5 hours. So she wrote down the times on a card that I needed to be at every kilometer. She wrapped it in that Glad wrap paper so that my sweat and let the ink run. She sewed my number on 3 sides, so it was like a pocket. I put the card in my pocket, and every now and then I could take out and see, was I going too fast or was I going too slow? So I managed my race. Okay. In business, the numbers serve as a measure of what we're doing. They tell a story. And we need to, how do we interpret that? What do we need to do to align ourselves? So if we're not showing up at our best in our business and we're not achieving the numbers, instead of getting into the ring and bashing ourselves about it and getting so upset about it, we need to say, okay, let's look at what we did so far and what do we need to do to achieve those numbers. I know it sounds really easy as I'm talking. It's not. But we need to take that time to do it. It's a form of measure. And then it was, again, be honest with ourselves and say, am I going too fast, too slowly? Do we need to tweak this? Do we need to tweak that? So that's the other thing I learned that I took into business with me. I'm not an accountant, but I had a spreadsheet. I knew every day, every order that came in, what my cash flow looked like if we had orders 3, 4, 5 months in advance. And it was a simple thing that I understood. That's what I learned. I took that learning from running the comrades into my business.
Awesome.
And one more thing I need to share with you. Not once in my training, even though I had an understanding that there was a chance that I wouldn't make that 7.5 hours, not once in my training, when I was doing my preparation, did I ever believe that I wouldn't. I always believed I would. And I think that's important also in business.
So I struggle on the whole belief part, right? Because how do you know when you do not believe in what you're doing and you're doing it to the best of your ability?
I think there's one word that comes to mind straight away, and that's when I have self-doubt. And often in my business, even now, I doubt sometimes whether I'm doing things right or not. That's when I need to step back and go, okay, what is this doubt about? I learned from a very experienced coach, actually the daughter of the lady whose academy I coached at. She said, make emotions your friend. Because when we're emotional, it's a signal that it's telling us something, whether I'm angry, whether I'm overwhelmed, whether I'm anxious, whether I'm upset, whatever that emotion is, we need to just stop and unpack it a little bit. And I can't go into that now. I can speak to you about it, and I do speak to my clients about it. It's a very simple process to go through that I learned how to unpack that emotion and find out what triggers us. But it really comes down to our understanding our core values. I don't have the time now to explain why.
No, I get that, and I totally understand it, because emotion really is tapped into the most primal part of us. So if that emotion is triggering something and it's making you do things, that is happening at the core of your being. So it's worth having a look at, because if you can change that, then it becomes natural. And there's no block, in inverted commas.
Yeah. So there's that. So when I feel stuck, that's also a sign. It's a good sign. It means it's a sign that you need to move to the next level. Okay. When I feel self-doubt, there's that lack of belief where I feel not worthy. And it often happened in my running. There were often times where I thought I came back, I didn't have a good training run. That's going to happen. I'm not a machine. Well, I thought I was at the time, but I'm not a machine. So when I didn't have a good training, oh God, how am I going to make it? I mean, look at this run. It was terrible. Okay, hold on. Just regather yourself. What can you do? Maybe you need to have a rest. Maybe you're pushing it okay. And then, okay, let's get back. What are you going to do next time? Are you going to have a break? Okay, I'm not going to go and run tomorrow. I'm going to have a break. I took like 3 days rest, got back on the road, and I was actually felt, I was stronger than before, and I had a great run. Okay, so it was about believing that I could do it and also trusting in myself. It taught me a lot to listen to myself, what's happening. And that's,
there's this
we get those
constant
signs in business too.
Yeah, 100%.
But we don't listen to them.
It feels like there's always this constant back and forth between whatever you're trying to achieve and the result of that goal or that action, and like this need to bounce it back and forward, and maybe like leading in beautifully to the fact that, you know, how does someone know when they actually need a coach or a guide or someone that can support them on their journey? I mean, you have made a decision when it came to your social media. I'm going to do this myself. And you struggle through it until you're like, I don't need to struggle no more. But I mean, and that realization.
Use a stronger word, Marlon. If you get, and I hope I'm actually going to. And we shouldn't let ourselves get to, I was so gutful of struggling. And I knew what it was doing. It was taking my focus away from what I'm actually good at. So
and so when does one realize, or when should one get a coach? You know, money is a general objection that comes around coaching for new businesses, for most businesses, regardless of their size. And there's all types of coaches, all different types of coaches, or different consultants and people that can support you along your journey. I mean, you were needing it in the social media space. When is the right time? Or when should someone really think about it?
Ideally, the right time is when you know what you're good at and what you're not good at. Ideally, that's the right time.
And test it out yourself, because the only way you really know is by actually doing, like you did. Yes. You did the social media and you're like, okay, this is too frustrating for me. But there's another element as well, that if your social media person starts giving the wrong message, you can rein it in and start shifting it, right?
So it's good to try these things, I suppose, and so on. So as I said, ideally the right time is to understand that I knew I wasn't good at social media and all those technology and stuff, yet I still pursued it and tried to do it, because obviously there's another element called finance. Okay, so we can't always afford to. Until it came to the point where I realized, you know what, in our businesses as entrepreneurs, we have to invest in our businesses. We have to invest in ourselves. I don't know how many businesses you can just start off without any investment. You know, when I started my clothing, my trims business in the clothing industry, I started with nothing. I've still got the check on my wall that I got from my first sale as an agent for somebody of 6,700 Rand. That's what started my business. But I had funding or savings that I didn't want to tap into, but I had to, okay, that could fund my business because my business couldn't produce the income that I needed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I also had to go and sell. I even sold lotto dice. I sold all kinds of crap, but it's to generate income. But when I really got stuck into my business, I was able to do it. And then I think one has to decide, like if I look at entrepreneurs now, there are lots of ways to fund your business. It's not only getting money out of your savings or people that like investors and so on. I went to my clients and I said to them, my existing clients, I said, I'm on my own. I don't have the financial needs to give you terms or the financial means to give you terms. So I was very upfront to them. And to this day, I'm indebted to probably about 5 of those guys that said to me, I said, I need to ask you to pay me COD and even maybe 50% because I had to pay my suppliers upfront. And on a handshake, Marlon, they agreed. And I said to them, I promise you, when I've built the business to a point where I can give you terms, I will. And I honored that. And I will never forget these people. And so I was able to run. So that was one form of funding. The other one, that I wasn't able to draw a salary. So another form of funding was, I didn't want to dive too much into our savings. So we sold other products and computer stuff. And my wife helped me and so on. So I think, and then I learned about, like now with the social medias, I think, and entrepreneurs needed to look at this, and I see it moving a lot in the world today. You don't have to employ people permanently. You can outsource. So you're not sitting with this constant overhead that you have to every night. You're going, oh, how am I going to cover this overhead? You can outsource and use people on an as and when you need basis, like I did with the social media. I paid a one-off sum, and he even offered to let me pay it in terms over a few months. But now it's done. When I need that person again, I will go to them. But I'm not sitting with a social media person that I employed in my business, and now I've got to sit with a constant worry of this overhead.
Yeah, and this is the beauty of today, I guess. We have that flexibility as entrepreneurs to make those type of agreements and sort of ad hoc use different services of people, and I think so many people are doing that, and it's really a smarter way to sort of do business, because in business, things change. Clients that you had last 3 months, they maybe contract ends, or things change for them. They can't pay you. Now what? You have to cut all these things. You can't cut employees. You can't cut these very fixed costs very easily. So when you have that flexibility with people, and you know what your cash flow looks like, it's much easier to divert these things. So I totally agree. With what you're saying.
You have to be continuous. Sorry, you have to be continuously. We live in a time of uncertainty. We can't control. Sorry, Marlon. What goes on the external. So what we can't control, we can't control. Make peace with it. But what can we? We can control our strategy. Okay. So I can control, like you said, if cash flows again, I can control how. Maybe in my strategy, I've got to detour from it a little bit. But I'm intentionally doing it still with the end in mind.
Yeah.
So we can make those decisions. Those are the things we can control.
Steven, I want to jump into one last sort of topic before we close. So I know of somebody that they're in a corporate space. They have team members around them, and since coming into that space, has been, super motivated. This person is really, really motivated, goes to work with a lot of guys in the industry that they love. And the people around them they're not performing. They don't want to perform, actually. Because this is the thing, like that's also perception. But at the same time, it's the truth. The truth in the sense that the standard of what is being created up until that point is not what's going to get them to the levels that they really want. And this person has made a very specific goal for themselves within the business, and they're in that sort of power position to be able to drive that change. But then team is sort of lulled to sleep. Everyone is they're clock watchers. They are people that don't want to perform. You have very few performers in the team, and even the boss is they've created that environment, right? So the boss who's above this person is what's your big deal? So how does one how does one sort of deal with that sort of environment and sort of still inspire change and then still drive the team, because it's really up to them at the same time? How does, in other words, I guess my question is, how does one lead without being a leader, without the title?
Oh, I love that. I love that question. So I'm listening to what you were saying, and we probably don't, it's not one specific answer, and it's not one easy answer. That's why I spend a lot of our time in the beginning with the client, my prospective clients, finding out more about their business. And that's why it's a journey. I coach a journey, not a program. I step into your space and go, what is your journey, and how can we together walk this journey with you, not for you? Because you know what to do. The business leaders know what to do. They're sometimes not seeing it because they're inside their heads, inside the box. So I wanted to answer that. How do I lead without a title? You need to forget about the leadership title, because if that's the only way you're leading, because you can tell people what to do because you have the authority to do it, and so they do it because they're too scared to lose their jobs, you will only have people who do what they need to do, and exactly what this person ends up with, where they don't really want to. Do they not want to do it? It's a question what they need to ask themselves, because if they don't want to be there and they don't want to do things, then maybe they shouldn't be there. But are they not doing it because of the environment? Okay, and if that's happening, leadership needs to understand that it's not about the title. I have two simple rules to leadership. The first thing is it starts with you, but the second rule is it's not about you. Bring the team in. Share with the team. If you're going to go through change, we're all resistant to change in some form or another. All of us. I've met very few people that aren't. How quickly we embrace change might differ. Some people can embrace it quickly, some people can't. But the big thing is, I think the big resistance to that is because often leaders are not telling us why they're making the change. When we understand, because we can't see the impact of the change that they see. And so we resist it because we're not sure. We've got something that works. And now we are being asked to change. We're not sure, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? What is? So if they share that with the team and get the team's buy-in, get the team's input, not buy-in, get their input. How do they feel about this? Will they go through the change seamlessly? No. Okay. Will they go through it a bit more with a bit more ease or more comfort than they would have? Yes. Because now they're understanding why. They might still not be able to see it. And the members of the team might go through different stages of that change differently. And we all go through that initial phase of resistance and denial and anger and all that. But once we head through the dip, the bottom of that change curve, and start moving up it, where we actually can start getting a glimpse of, okay, maybe, and letting go of the old, and we start getting a glimpse of, okay, actually, maybe I see some benefit here. And then as we get further into it, now I can see it's working, and now we get total acceptance of it, then we go. But it's leadership are part of the team. So I always say that the position of the leader is no more or less important than the position of the guy that sweeps the floor, or the tea lady. Because, and I'll say that, what his position requires him to do, okay, and what the guy that sweeps the floor's position requires him, all impact on the team's performance. If they come in the morning into office that's this thick in dust and it's dirty and everything's all over the place, they're not going to produce to their best. If the leader or the CEO doesn't perform in his position, what's required of that position will also impact on the team. The big difference is the responsibility. That's why it's called roles and responsibilities. The responsibility of the CEO is a lot more than the guy who sweeps the floor. So his responsibility is to the team, to develop the team, to get the team to work towards a common goal. Share your goals. Their values are very important. Values are extremely important because it defines the behavior of the company and the culture. But share it. A lot of people don't share it. I've seen in businesses values on the wall, but I've asked people about it. They didn't even know that they were there. They walk past them every day. They don't know that they're there. They don't know what they are, and they don't know what they mean. And I always say, you know what, then it doesn't really make for a pretty picture. Take it off and put a picture on that motivates, that when people come in with nice colors, it maybe gives them good energy and motivates them. But preferably not. Preferably tell them, ask them, what do they think these values mean to them? Because it defines their behavior.
Awesome.
And then you get a cultural fit. But this is like...
I totally agree with you.
Leaders need to see, in simple answer, they need to see themselves as part of the team and not over and above the team.
No, I totally agree with you. Just to share a quick story. And I think going back to the fact that the Olympic Games just passed and was in Tokyo, the Japanese culture is one that really shows this a lot. Huge sense of humility and one thing that which is always, it's always shown in, because I'm in the judo world, and in that space, you had, I'll never forget, there was a picture of Olympic champion. I mean, I think he was a 2-time Olympic champion, so many time world champion, he Asia champion. The guy he's basically a legend in the heavyweight category, and he was sweeping the mat. And you know, he was sweeping the mat. Nobody asked him. It wasn't, you know, they have people that do that. But when you see someone who has status, who has a title, and they care just as much about the space that everybody works in, that is like a true mark of a leader. And I often go back to that. I think even the World Cup, the last World Cup that happened, there was the Japanese people cleaned up, whereas everybody else, they kind of leave, you know, in the stadiums, they leave their stuff all around because there's cleaners, right? But the Japanese people, they cleaned up with them. They took their stuff and everyone else's, you know, and the players too. They did that inside the change rooms. I actually saw different pictures of the change rooms from the different nations versus Japan. And that is a real, I mean, that's what you're talking about. As you're talking about that, that's what I was thinking about, that we really got to get that buy-in from our staff and get the share with them and allow them to share as well, because then that kind of gets us on the same page. And I think that's valuable advice. So hard to do because we have our own ambitions and want to impress them on other people, but but also so easy to do, you know, to be vulnerable with people that we work with, because we see them every day.
Yes, and I think that's such an important thing, that point that you raised now, or statement that you made, Marlon, is being vulnerable. Leaders need to be vulnerable. They're also human. Because I have a title of leader does not make me this, you know, the word I always liked is bulletproof. I'm human. Show your people that you're leading that you're human. They'll also support you.
Yeah.
You're part of the team. Create that culture where you're part of the team. But when we're working in such diversity, what is the glue that holds the team together? Do we all buy into the vision that we're working towards? And then does the leader's responsibility is to inspire and develop and grow those people in their uniqueness so that he or she builds a high performing team, including themselves, to achieve what they are all hopefully want to achieve. And then you're really working as a true team. If you only want to lead from a title, I don't know how much time we got left because we've spoken quite long, but I want to share a coaching experience. Obviously, I can't mention names and so on for confidentiality, but I'm working with someone now who has experienced this exact problem. The CEO of the company, a very successful company, has someone in a management position who is only, by their own admission, so that the CEO is having problems with this person, managing the people underneath her. So what do I do about it? So, okay, why is she in this management position? The CEO tells me openly. This person asked the CEO, I've been here for 15 years or something, and I would like the title because of my experience and the years of service that I've given.
Mm-hmm.
She says to her, so she gives her the title of manager. There was one thing they left out was, do you want the responsibility of manager? Okay. And the answer to that in her behavior was no. Okay. And that's why the people underneath her are not performing.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to, does she want to take on the responsibility that goes with that title? And the answer, so she asked, and the answer was no. So, okay, well then you can't separate the two. You can't have the title and not the responsibility. You've got to take, it comes as a package. If you only want a title, go and get a badge that says manager, and then you can wear it outside of the office and you can walk down the street and everybody can see that you're a manager. I'd rather see your name on it, but if you want manager on it, that's cool. If that's all it means to you. And so that's a very real example of what's happening. And now we're working on that to develop the right person for the right position. And that's important. We need it. Business is not about people. Business is about the right people.
Yeah. Yeah. Powerful stuff. Steven, we could talk for hours. And, in our conversation, I literally was thinking, I should make this like 2 hours because it's really like, but I really think what I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask you on the show, is perhaps, because I have a whole lot more questions, a few more things, and perhaps what would be great for maybe the blog is, can I send you like a couple of questions and then maybe you do short video snips for the people that maybe want to watch this and get some more context and connect with you. I think it would be so awesome because I mean the wisdom that you're sharing is so it may not be new, but what it is necessary. We need the reminders. We need to really go back in things. As you're talking, I'm thinking like, flip, yeah, I gotta look at that, and it's just stuff that we can never. Leadership is one that we're always trying to get better at. We're always trying to improve, and we're trying to learn about how to be better people, to create a better world. So I want to thank you for your time and thank you for all your sharing. It was really awesome.
Thank you, Marlon. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your show. Thank you for giving me the time to share my stories and my journey with you. It's also great lessons to me that I learned from you, and for allowing me to talk so long.
I loved it, man. I think it's awesome, and I hope people get a lot of value out of this. Yeah, you gave me so many ideas. So really, thank you so much for your time. And we're gonna call it here. And I look forward to connecting with you again, possibly getting you back on the show.
I would like to just end off that people must please understand that it's a journey. It's not easy. What I said sounds, they're going to say, this guy, like, is it ideal? What I'm saying is these are what we need to look at, but to get there is a journey. And you ask, when do you need a coach? My answer to that is look at Usain Bolt, look at Roger Federer, look at Djokovic, look at Tiger Woods, look at Nadal, look at Jock Callis, look at this Springback Rugby. They all got coaches and they're all the best in the world at what they do.
Yeah. Even the ones that are not really the best, even the ones that just make it some way, they all have coaches. The ones that decided to do it themselves, they fail very fast.
Yeah. So we help you see what you're not seeing.
Oh, yeah.
You know it, but you're not seeing it.
Brilliant. Steven,
Thank you,
you
sir.
have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day, and we will connect very, very soon. Cheers.
Will do. I look forward to that.
Bye.